I traveled to Iceland this summer as a pre-trip to my study abroad in Athens, Greece. I went with my two best friends, Emily and Kelly. Velkommen til Iceland, or as we say here, welcome to Iceland. A land of fire, ice, and elves, Iceland is a beacon of nature's majesty and culture. We began our journey with a delayed flight out of Dulles, which was soon redeemed as we sunk into the warm mineral waters of the Blue Lagoon. Following our lagoon adventures, we ventured to the grocery store where we encountered cool American Doritos, known here as Ranch. Apparently, Ranch is super American? After driving about an hour and a half southeast of Keflavik, we came upon one of Iceland's most impressive waterfalls, Seljalandsfoss. Perhaps the most impressive part of this waterfall was the rather wet hike through it. We continued the trail near Seljalandsfoss and encountered this small creek where we filled our water bottles with the freshest water I've ever tasted. Farther up a nearby trail, we encountered another fall, hidden in a cave. We decided to take our hiking boots and socks off and walk inside. It was freezing, but how many times do you go to Iceland? Plus, everyone else was doing it. Day 2, and I cannot get enough of this country. Our first stop is at Skogafoss, meaning Forest Falls. Alongside this waterfall was 401 steps to the top. Yes, I counted. The best part was that when we got to the top, huffing and puffing, it was foggy and there was zero visibility. But good exercise, right? Next, we headed about 30 minutes south to the beaches of Vik. These beaches are famous for their basalt columns and black sand. Legend has it the two columns in the water are two Viking trolls that became stone when sunlight fell upon them one morning, and the cave I'm standing under is said to be their capsized ship. Next, we hopped back in the car and stopped at Fjallajökull. This was by far one of the most breathtaking sights I had ever seen, or so I thought, but this was only day 2. Next, we found ourselves on a hiking trail that led to Svartafoss. This hike was extremely misleading and gave us a great workout. We underestimated what Icelanders mean by a moderate level 3-kilometer hike. Moderate in Iceland is way different from moderate here, but the view was worth it. Just a few more minutes down the famous ring road around the country of Iceland, we stopped at Jökulsárlón. This was a magnificent bay filled with icebergs that break away from 2 nearby glaciers that I can most definitely not pronounce the names of. Nighttime of day 3, when we arrived at our Airbnb, I had to include this picture as it is never dusk at 12:10 in the a.m. and still this light outside in the US. I was thankful that Airbnb hosts understood the need for blackout shades in all of the bedrooms. Day 3 started with a drive to our first site for the day. Along the way, we saw a fairly magnificent waterfall along the road, which we had to stop for our Foss of the Day picture. Foss is Icelandic for waterfall and became a term in our daily vocabulary while we were there. Another unscheduled stop was our stop at Mavten. The sulfuric mud pits and boiling steam vents were a sight to see. However, plug your nose because the smell of the sulfur was nearly unbearable. Finally, we arrived at the foss we were headed for, Goðafoss, known as the Waterfall of the Gods. This was by far my favorite waterfall that we encountered throughout our entire trip. This picture was taken as we approached the capital of the north, Akureyri. After snuggling into what would be our Airbnb for the next 2 nights, we got some sleep. The next afternoon, we decided to venture to nearby Hub and check out a brewery, Kaldi Brewery, which all the locals had recommended to us. The next morning, we departed Akureyri and made our way to Dynjandi. This waterfall was breathtaking and took about 45 minutes of off-roading to get to, but it was well worth it. Up near the top was amazing, but definitely a view you had to be willing to get soaked for. On our way to Latrebjarg Peninsula, we stopped at the famous abandoned ship and noticed waters as blue as the Caribbean. If only they were that warm. Finally, we arrived at the puffins, the whole reason we came to Iceland. Not actually, but they were super cool and are only seasonal. This little guy was modeling for everyone and he definitely knew it. After the puffins, we headed for the capital of Reykjavik for our last few days. We saw a sign that pointed this way towards Reykjavik, but it was off a cliff that is pictured here. They were definitely wrong. It did not lead to Reykjavik. We arrived at our Airbnb for the night, which was situated right behind Kirkjuvell as a beautiful backdrop, a volcano to which me looked like was smoking. A beautiful view behind our Airbnb, but also to the front, we enjoyed the beautiful midnight sun, which is only available to see during the summer months in Iceland. Day 6 began with our trip around the Golden Circle. After being spoiled with non-tourist filled locations, we quickly had enough of our adventures for this day, as every location was filled with tourists. We then stopped at Barnfossar, a system of water flow. This evening, we stopped and saw Hallgrímskirkja, the highest point in Iceland, and also took sunset pictures at the Sun Voyager sculpture. The morning of day 7 was what I had been waiting for all trip. We went snorkeling in the Silfra Fissure, where the tectonic plates of North America and Europe meet and drift apart about 2 centimeters every year. This was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and I am so thankful we did this. This is also the freshest water in the world, and is due to freshwater upflow from the glaciers beneath the hardened lava beneath Lake Thingvallavatn. We headed our trip at the end of the Golden Circle with a stop at Stroker Geyser, which went off every 10 minutes, and then a quick stop at Gullfoss, which is considered one of Iceland's most impressive waterfalls. On our final day, we saw Harpa, Reykjavik's famous music hall, with architecture representative of the basalt columns found around much of Iceland. We then headed to the airport, where I headed to Athens, Greece for a month where I studied abroad. I cannot wait to go back to Iceland in the winter to experience the amazing aurora borealis.